Today, I'm doing my first budget recap over here on YouTube, and I can't wait to show you my entire process for closing out my budget at the end of the month. Hi, I'm Kamiko from The Budget Mom. Come along with me as I strive to live a life I love on a budget that I can afford. Welcome to the Budget Mom YouTube channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different. So I've been sharing my budget overviews probably for the last month over on YouTube and a whole lot longer over on Instagram. Today I'm going to take you through the process on how I close out my budget every month. So what does close out your budget actually mean? When I started budgeting I would say about 3 or 4 years ago now, I've been budgeting since 2011, but I really have been diving into the details of my budget probably for the last 3 or 4 years. Closing out your budget just essentially means you're looking at your spending. The entire process is completely dependent on tracking your spending and learning how to extract that helpful information to tell you what is your budget telling you. And so it all comes down from your spending. But what it really means essentially also is it's a way of looking at your money in a completely different way. So I don't know if you get done at the end of the month and you have your budgets from that month, what do you do with them? Do you look at them? Do you analyze what your budget's telling you, where you're spending, where your money went? And is your spending aligning with your goals? So the process of closing out your budget, if you're seeing it for the first time, can seem really overwhelming. And in fact, I know a lot of people who see this video for the first time are going to say, that's too much work, it's not worth it. But I tell you, I would not continue to do this for the last 3 years if I did not see benefits from it in my own life. Saying that though, I don't want you to feel that you have to do your budgeting process this way. For me, this is what's helped me cut back on spending. It helps me figure out where my money needs to go with my budget and with my finances in order for me to reach my financial goals. So let me show you what it looks like when I close out my budget at the end of the month. I try sharing my story to remind readers that there is a way out, that with hard work, dedication, determination, motivation, it's all about having a plan for your money. And that's what gives you the true control. Holy crap, it just changed my life. You're like, oh man, Nico, it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes work, but no more credit card debt. So when I'm closing out my budget at the end of the month, I essentially use 3 different worksheets to extract helpful information from my budget for that month that I was working in. So today we're going to be doing a full budget recap for the month of January, since now we're into February. So I have closed out my budget for January, and this is what it looks like. First off, everything that I do for closing out my budget at the end of the month comes from my expense trackers. Now, I manually track my expenses and I use the highlighter method, and that's what all these different colors represent. I will be putting a link to how I track my expenses in the description of this video. Every single color on my expense tracker represents a different category in my budget. So for example, food is in blue, I have gas and car purchases in purple, and so on. So everything that I do for closing out my budget is all for my expense trackers. I have 2 expense trackers in my budget. One is for cash spending and one is for my checking account. I like to keep them separate, just it helps me stay organized and I track a lot better by keeping them separate. So with the first worksheet, the first thing that I like to do is figure out my monthly income. And for your monthly income, it's your starting balance plus any incoming income that you had for the month. So what do I mean by starting balance? Starting balance is the amount that you have in your cash envelopes or your checking account on the day that you start tracking. So for me, I like to track my expenses from the first of the month to the last day of the month. So on January 1st, when I started tracking, I had $352 left in my cash envelopes. That's my starting balance for my cash tracker. On January 1st, I had $2,017.50 in my checking account on January 1st. That is my starting balance for my checking account. So if you add these two starting balances together, what I had in my cash envelopes on January 1st and what I had in my checking account on January 1st, the starting balance that I was working with was $2,369.50. But I also had income for the month of January. And if you can see on my expense tracker, you can see where I have income coming in for the month. I have my paychecks, I have income that I have coming in. My boyfriend reimburses me for half the bills. I count that as income for the month of January. All of my income coming in for the month of January also needs to be included in my monthly income. So if you take the starting balance, what I started with on January 1st in my cash envelopes and my checking account, plus any incoming income that I had in the month of January, I had a total monthly income of $7,014. Now, I know that might seem really high for 1 month, but remember, that's not the amount that I made in January. The amount that I made in January is $4,644.74, but I also had a starting balance. So those two added together equals the $7,014. So that's the first thing that I do. What was my income? The next thing I do is my expenses. Now, because I highlight all of my different categories, it's very easy for me to add up my expenses into categories. This is organizing your budget in a realistic way compared to what you're really spending your money on. So I get a lot of questions, what categories do I use for my budget? That's when I ask you, well, where is your money going? So this is a great way, and the highlighter method is a great visual way to see where your money is going and then to categorize it as you spend it. So I have all of my categories, and what you're seeing at the top here at the top of my expense trackers is for every single expense tracker, I add up my expenses into these different categories. That way, if I have multiple expense trackers, so I didn't have a lot of spending in January. Really, I actually had a goal in the month of January to only use one expense tracker for my cash spending and one expense tracker for my checking account. I wanted to keep my spending transactions low, so my goal was to only use one. But if I had multiple, say if, for instance, in my checking account, if I filled up 2 of these, I would add up each one at the top here for each expense tracker and then total them up together when I'm closing out my budget. So essentially I have my categories, as well as I create a paycheck on the 5th and the 20th when I get paid. But I also like to set a monthly amount. So I don't like to just say, I only spend $200 a paycheck on food. I want to know the total monthly amount that I want to budget for. So for me, that would be $400 a month on food. I like to plan around $500 towards my debt payments. Now, I haven't posted the video yet, but I recently just got done paying off all of my debt. I'm 100% debt free, so I will not have this category in my budget in February. But I like to spend about $100 on miscellaneous every month. Now keep in mind, this is just my budget. This is what I would like to stick to, my budget. Here's what I actually spent for the month. Now I just recently did, and I'll be posting a video shortly, of the Pack a Lunch January Savings Challenge. And it's quite remarkable the amount of money that I actually saved. So in the month of January, I only spent $253 on food. That's for eating out and grocery trips. How did I keep my budget my spending so low for my food? One, that Pack a Lunch January Savings Challenge completely changed my spending habits. So what I found was that not only was I saving money by not eating out for lunches, by not being prepared, by packing my lunches for work, was oftentimes on my lunches when I'm driving around to go get food, I would stop by and do other tasks. So I would stop by Staples, or I would stop by Walmart, and I would pick up, my huge thing that I do is I like to pick up different office supplies. I'm a planner junkie, and so I tend to overspend in that category. But because I wasn't leaving work to go out and get food, and also on top of that, I went 2 weeks in the month of January without going to the grocery store. So I went for milk and I went for half and half. But besides that, I did not do any grocery trips in the month of January for my food costs because I planned my meal plans based on what I have at home. So it's monthly budget versus what I actually spend. Here, I like to know the difference. So did I spend under or over what I budgeted for? If it's in black, I spent less than what I budgeted for. If it's in red, I spent more than what I budgeted for. This is great because this tells you realistically in your everyday life where your money is going. This is fantastic because this is what gives you awareness. And awareness is the first step in your financial journey. But it does another thing. It also allows you to see problem areas that you might have in your budget. Where are you overspending in your budget? Where are you spending less? Where can you tweak things in your budget categories to make your budget work better for you? So as you can see, I also have to include a February starting balance. Now, what does this mean? This means that on January 31st, I still had money left in my cash envelopes and my checking account. That means I'm going to have money sitting in those things starting on February 1st. And because I track my spending from February 1st to the last day of the month, I have a starting balance for February. So on January 31st, I had money in my checking account and my cash envelopes that equaled $2,110. Now, why is this in my budget category breakdown? Because every dollar of your income has to be going somewhere in your budget. And because now I like to call this starting balance. Some people call it savings. Some people call it one month ahead. They use this to be 1 month ahead of their expenses. For me, I just use it as a starting balance because the last paycheck in January is paying some of my bills early on in February. So this amount will be taken up or eaten up by, for instance, my rent payment that's not due until the 1st. So that's how the starting balance works. But I also like to know the percentages. So what percentage of my income went towards food? 4%. What percent of my income went towards debt? 15%. I like to know these percentages relative and compared to my income. So this is the budget category breakdown, figuring out where my money went. And am I sticking to my budget? That's what this first worksheet is for. The second worksheet is where did my money go, monthly debt and savings breakdown. Here's what this form does. Not only do I like to know how much of my income went to debt and to savings, but I want to know what debt am I tackling and what savings goals am I tackling. I like to get specific because this is where you get to see if your spending is aligning with your financial goals or your financial plan. So for me in the month of January, my goal was to pay off my last remaining debt, which was my car loan. So as you can see, I spent $1,031 in the month of January that went towards debt. And of that, pretty much 100% went towards my car loan. That's aligning with my financial goals. Now I had 2 cents, a little bit of leftover interest that was on my student loans after I paid those off in December. So, but essentially 100% of the debt that I paid in the month of January went to my car loan. Now for savings, $1,029 went towards my savings. That's about both of these are about 15% of my income. But I don't like to just know what, the total amount that I saved. I want to know what saving goals am I tackling? And is it aligning with my financial goals? I break it down into what I saved for. My 401k, 18%. Now, if you look at all of these, so I saved, in the month of January, I saved for 401k, vacation, medical, my car maintenance fund, my sinking funds. Now, my sinking funds are for holidays and events in the future. So I'm prepared with cash when those expenses come up rather than feeling pressured to use my credit card. But I have something new that I'm saving for in the month of January. It's my house savings. So I am currently having a financial goal to pay all cash for my first home purchase. That's where a lot of my savings went. It is aligning with my financial goals. 41% of the amount that I saved for the month of January went towards my house savings account. Now you might be asking, how do I know the breakdown of this? It's easy to figure out the total monthly savings per month, but how do I break it down into this? It's all based on your expense trackers. You can see I have on my expense trackers what I'm saving for. Like AF savings is my vacation savings. I also have my medical savings, my 401k savings. I was able to extract exactly what I'm saving for because I have it written down in my expense trackers. So that's what the monthly debt and savings breakdown is all about. It's figuring out, are you throwing your money at the things that truly matter to you? Debt and savings. The next worksheet that I work on is a monthly spending comparison. So this is one of my favorite worksheets. It allows me to compare my spending from the previous month to this month, and if there was a monthly income change. So in the month of January, compared to December, my income decreased from about $1,569. And sometimes my income does fluctuate like that because of my business income. Starting in January, it's the first month that I'm actually getting a real paycheck from my business. But before that, it was kind of just, I assigned a wage for myself based on what I needed for my personal spending, but now it's a set amount every single month. So this will tend to be level out going on in the future, but since December, in January, my income decreased by about $1,500. The great thing about this worksheet is it allows you to see the problem areas or spending issues you might have in your budget. So in December, for example, I spent $556 on food. In January, I spent $253. I like to know the difference in spending, so if it's in red, I spent less in this month compared to last month, and if it's in black, I spent more. As you can see, month of January was really good for me when it came to my spending. I really spent a lot less than I did in December. Now with the January Pack-a-Lunch Savings Challenge, compared to last month, I saved $303. Now it wasn't truly 100% contributed to the Pack-a-Lunch Savings Challenge. It's kind of weird when you do a saving challenge and how it kind of trickles into other areas of your life, and it trickled into my meal planning. And I challenged myself a lot to eat the things that I already had at home. And I'll be doing a full meal plan update on the blog here shortly. But these are the 3 different worksheets that I use to close out my budget. So how do you know if you're doing this process correctly? So I have some sticky notes to show you. There is a formula that you need to use when closing out your budget at the end of the month, and this is the formula. It's starting balance plus income minus expenses. So what did you start with on the first day of your tracking? So for me, January 1st, what income did you have coming in and what expenses did you have? So the best thing to do is to get 3 parts of that equation written down. And that's what I have done here. The next step is actually working through the equation. Starting balance plus my income gives me my total monthly income for January, which was $7,014. My total expenses, everything that I spent my money on. So I added up all these different transactions. All of my expenses for the month of January equaled $4,904. Starting balance plus income minus expenses gave me $2,109. So how do you know if your formula is right and you worked it out correctly? I'll show you a little cool trick. On February 1st, when I started tracking my new expense trackers, on February 1st, I had $1,761 in my checking account. I had $348 in my cash envelopes. That means my starting balance for February is $2,009.55. Do you see how they match? And here's the cool trick. Your January closing balance, right here, should equal your February starting balance, right here. So if these match, you know that you are closing out your budget correctly. Now also, if this is your first time budgeting and the first time tracking your spending, closing it out like this might be extremely overwhelming. And the one thing that I tell people is focus on at least breaking down your expenses. Track your spending for a month, get it organized into categories. Don't worry so much about the numbers matching. This is what I want you to focus on, because it's where your money is going is what you need to actually create a budget. So I always tell people to track their spending for a month before they even tackle a budget, because until you know your categories of your realistic spending in your everyday life, you cannot create a budget that is a reflection of your real life. So it's important not to just create a budget. You want to do it based on your actual spending, and that's what this first step does for you. Now, I like to close it out like this because I use a zero-based budget. Every dollar of income has a plan or should be spent in my budget. And if I do it correctly, these things should match. My starting or my closing balance for January should equal my starting balance for February. Now, this seems very, very overwhelming, and I know that, but I can literally get this done now in about 15 minutes, especially since I work on my budget worksheets a little bit every single month. So I start to fill these in around the middle of the month. And that way, when I get to the end of the month, it's literally filling just out the rest here and there. But the most part, it's filled out. So that's my budget recap. Now, also, and this is how you close out your budget. For my budget recap, though, I think it's also important to show you a couple other things. So like I explained, in the month of January, I paid off my last remaining debt. I no longer have any debt, and I did use some of my business income to pay off that last remaining debt. But my budget overview, the overview that I just showed you, is strictly for my personal income. My business income, my business finances, and my personal finances are completely separate. So this worksheet that you're seeing here, the debt payment plan, here's where I made my extra payments. So in this area, this is where you would write down any extra payments that you made past the minimum payment. Now up here, if I had any debt, I would write down what debt I had, the balance, the interest rate, the minimum payment. And if you want to pay them off in a specific order, you would write the order numbers here. But as you can see, I spent $1,031 in the month of January towards debt, which means that with my business income that you're not seeing here, because this is strictly for my personal finances, I paid off 61% of my debt in the month of January. 100% debt-free. And if you're wondering about my debt-free journey, I'll put a link to the article in the description of this video that details my entire journey from start to finish and the things that I did in my life to pay off my debt. Another great thing is the monthly net worth tracker. Now, I track my monthly net worth, and I have a video on my YouTube describing more and explaining more about the net worth, but essentially I started with last month I had a net worth of $112,000. This month my net worth was $164,000 because I paid off my debt. I no longer have liabilities. Now your net worth is just your total assets minus your total liabilities. I don't have any liabilities, so I just focus on my assets. My net worth increased by 46% in the month of January because I paid off my debt. Now these two forms, I track my net worth and I track my overall debt payments at the end of every month, and I usually do it around the last day of the month after every payment has been posted After everything has cleared the bank, after everything has settled, that's when I track my debt progress and my net worth progress for the month. So that's essentially my budget recap. January was a very, very good month. Now I have a feeling I do need to go to the grocery store in the month of February, and I will be doing some more meal planning in the month of February. So I think my food spending will increase, but that's okay. Another thing, our sweet family guinea pig Penny passed away a couple nights ago in her sleep. So I will no longer have a pet cost. I have decided to go ahead and allocate the money that I was using for Penny for now a household envelope, toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies for the house. I'll have my own dedicated envelope for that. So if you have any questions on how I close out my budget or my budget recap for the month of January, head over to TBM Family, my private Facebook group, and I will be over there answering questions over there. I have a ton of really great supportive members, motivating members who also help answer a lot of questions, especially members who have been doing this for quite a while. If you found this video helpful, please share it, and don't forget to subscribe.